The morning sun barely touched the towers of Windsor Castle when Sergeant Marcus Thornhill arrived for his shift. He had served in the Queen's Guard for 12 years, earning medals and commendations that decorated his service record. His posture remained rigid as he took his position outside the state apartments, where Prince William and his family were scheduled to attend a private breakfast with visiting dignitaries. Marcus had always taken pride in his work. The red tunic, the bearskin cap, the unwavering stance that tourists photographed by the thousands. He represented something larger than himself, a tradition stretching back centuries. Today felt no different than any other Tuesday morning, except for the slight tension in his shoulders that he couldn't quite explain. Inside the castle, Prince William was reviewing his schedule with his private secretary. The breakfast meeting was important, involving representatives from 3 Commonwealth nations discussing youth mental health initiatives. William had championed these causes for years, and this meeting could unlock funding for programs across multiple countries. He glanced at his watch, noting they had 15 minutes before the guests arrived. Catherine entered the room, adjusting her pearl necklace. "The children are asking if they can meet the ambassador from Jamaica," she said with a small smile. Apparently Charlotte has been learning about the island in geography class. William nodded, his mind already moving through the day's events. "After the breakfast, perhaps. We should keep this meeting focused on the initiatives first." Outside, Marcus watched as the first of the dignitaries' vehicles approached the castle gates. The security protocols were extensive for such visits. Every guard had been briefed, every entrance monitored, every potential risk assessed and addressed. Marcus had attended the briefing the previous evening, taking careful notes as the head of security outlined the schedule. The ambassador's car passed through the checkpoint without incident. Marcus remained motionless, his eyes scanning the courtyard with practiced efficiency. Years of training had taught him to notice everything while appearing to notice nothing. The slight deviation in a tourist's path, the unexpected movement in his peripheral vision, the sound of footsteps that didn't match the usual rhythm of the castle grounds. What Marcus didn't know was that his personal phone, tucked away in the guard station locker room, had been buzzing repeatedly for the past hour. His sister had been trying to reach him with urgent news about their mother's sudden hospitalization. The messages went unread, the calls unanswered. Protocol demanded complete focus during duty hours, and Marcus never broke protocol. Inside the state apartments, the breakfast meeting began with formal introductions. Prince William shook hands with each dignitary, his warm smile putting them at ease despite the grandeur of their surroundings. The conversation quickly turned to the programs they hoped to establish. With William sharing insights from his work with various mental health organizations, "We've seen remarkable results when young people have access to proper support systems," William explained, gesturing to a chart his team had prepared. "But the challenge is always sustainability and reach." The Jamaican ambassador leaned forward with interest. "In Kingston, we've identified 17 communities that would benefit immediately from such programs. The question is implementation," as they discussed logistics and funding models. Catherine quietly ensured that tea and coffee were replenished, playing the role of gracious host while remaining engaged with the substantive conversation. She had her own initiatives in early childhood development and saw clear connections between the work being discussed and her own projects. Outside, the morning grew warmer. Marcus felt sweat beginning to form under his bearskin cap, but his expression never changed. A group of tourists gathered nearby, cameras clicking, children pointing and whispering. He had become accustomed to being treated as part of the scenery, a living statue for people to photograph and wonder about. A young boy, perhaps 7 years old, approached closer than the barriers typically allowed. His mother called out nervously, but Marcus remained still. The protocol was clear: ignore minor intrusions unless they posed a security risk. The boy stared up at him with wide eyes, clearly impressed by the uniform and the unwavering stance. "Ma'am, does he ever move?" the boy asked loudly. Marcus suppressed the urge to smile. He had heard similar questions thousands of times. The boy's mother gently pulled him back behind the barrier, apologizing to no one in particular. The family moved on to photograph another guard, and Marcus continued his watch. inside the guard station. Another officer was reviewing the shift schedules when Marcus's phone, still in the locker, began ringing again. This time, the caller was his brother. The family situation was deteriorating, but there was no way for the message to reach Marcus during his duty hours. The rules existed for good reason. Distractions could compromise security. Security could never be compromised. The breakfast meeting in the state apartments was progressing well. William had successfully guided the conversation toward concrete commitments. With each nation agreeing to pilot programs in specific communities, the atmosphere was optimistic, collaborative. These were the moments that made the ceremonial aspects of royal life worthwhile. When real change could be initiated through the platform his position provided, we should establish quarterly check-ins, the Canadian representative suggested. Track progress, share challenges, adjust strategies as needed. William agreed immediately. Accountability will be crucial. We need to ensure these programs deliver actual results, not just good intentions, Catherine added, and we should involve young people in the oversight process. They're the experts on what they need. The dignitaries nodded appreciatively. This was why they had traveled to Windsor, this combination of royal influence and genuine commitment to meaningful work. The meeting was exceeding expectations. Outside, Marcus noticed a shift change approaching. His replacement would arrive in 20 minutes, at which point he could finally check his phone, perhaps grab lunch in the staff canteen. The morning had passed without incident, exactly as it should. He took pride in uneventful shifts, knowing that boredom was actually success in his line of work. What, Marcus couldn't see, was the email that had been sent to the head of palace security an hour earlier. An anonymous tip, vague but concerning, suggesting that one of the guards on duty that morning had been behaving unusually in recent weeks. The security team was reviewing surveillance footage, cross-referencing duty logs, trying to determine if the tip had any merit or was simply malicious nonsense. The investigation was proceeding quietly, professionally, without drama or immediate action. This was how palace security operated, with careful deliberation rather than hasty conclusions. But the wheels were turning, and Marcus Thornhill's name had appeared on a list that morning. Flagged for additional review? Inside the castle, Prince William was concluding the breakfast meeting with warm handshakes and genuine gratitude. "This has been tremendously productive," he told the assembled group. "I'm excited to see these programs take shape." Dignitaries filed out, escorted by palace staff toward their waiting vehicles. William remained in the state apartments briefly, making notes on his tablet about follow-up actions required. Catherine had already departed to attend to the children, who were indeed hoping to meet at least one of the ambassadors before the visitors. Left the castle grounds, Marcus watched the diplomatic vehicles exit through the main gates, maintaining his position even as his shift neared its end. Professional to the last moment, never relaxing until properly relieved. It was this dedication that had earned him commendations, that had made him a model guard. But dedication wouldn't be enough for what was coming. The investigation into the anonymous tip was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would change everything Marcus thought he knew about his career, his reputation, and his future. The relief guard arrived precisely on schedule, and Marcus executed the formal change of duty with practiced precision. The brief exchange of information took less than 30 seconds. And then Marcus was walking across the courtyard toward the guard station, his muscles finally allowed to relax after hours of rigid attention. He changed out of his ceremonial uniform in the locker room, carefully hanging each piece in its designated place. The bearskin cap went on its stand, the red tunic on its hanger, the boots polished and stored. Only then did he retrieve his phone from the locker, expecting perhaps a message or two from friends. The screen lit up with 17 missed calls and 12 text messages. Marcus felt his stomach drop as he scrolled through the notifications. All from family. All marked urgent. His hands trembled slightly as he dialed his sister's number. "Marcus, finally." Emma's voice was strained, emotional. "Mom had a stroke this morning. She's in hospital. It's serious." The world seemed to tilt. Marcus gripped the locker door for support. "What happened? When? around 7 this morning. Dad found her unresponsive. They've done emergency surgery, but the doctors say the next 24 hours are critical. Emma's voice cracked. Where have you been? We've been trying to reach you for hours. I was on duty, Marcus said quietly, already knowing how hollow it would sound. I couldn't have my phone. Your mother might be dying, and you couldn't have your phone? The anger in Emma's voice was raw, painful. Marcus closed his eyes. I'm leaving now. Which hospital? As he gathered his belongings, another guard entered the locker room. Thomas had served alongside Marcus for 6 years, and they had developed the easy friendship of colleagues who trusted each other completely. You all right, mate? Thomas asked, noting Marcus's pale complexion. You look like you've seen a ghost. Marcus explained quickly, the words tumbling out. Thomas placed a hand on his shoulder. Go. Family comes first. I'll let the shift supervisor know you've had an emergency. Thanks, Marcus managed. Already heading for the door, what neither of them knew was that at that precise moment, in an office 3 floors above them, the head of Palace Security was reviewing surveillance footage with 2 senior officers. The anonymous tip had mentioned unusual behavior, and they were methodically checking recent recordings of all guards who had been on duty that week. Stop there, one of the officers said, pointing at the screen. The footage showed Marcus in the castle gardens during a break period 3 days earlier. He was on his phone, his expression intense, gesturing with his free hand in what appeared to be an agitated conversation. The security head asked. We're checking phone records now, sir? But there's more. The officer pulled up another clip, this one from 5 days prior. Marcus was again on his phone during a break, this time appearing to photograph something on a document he was holding. The security head frowned. That's concerning. Guards aren't permitted to photograph any palace documents or briefing materials. Could be innocent, the second officer suggested. Maybe a personal document, a bill, or something he needed to send to someone. Maybe, the security head agreed. But given the tip we received, we need to investigate thoroughly. Pull all footage of Thornhill from the past month. Check his access logs, his duty assignments, everything. The investigation was escalating from routine inquiry to serious concern. The photographs, the agitated phone calls, the timing of it all. It created a pattern that demanded explanation. But they would proceed carefully, professionally. Gathering all the facts before taking any action, Marcus drove to the hospital in a blur of guilt and fear. He should have checked his phone during his morning break. He should have violated protocol just this once. But 12 years of military discipline had made such violations unthinkable. The rules existed for a reason, and Marcus had always followed the rules. The hospital corridors smelled of disinfectant and anxiety. Marcus found his father in the intensive care waiting area, looking older than he had just a week ago. They embraced wordlessly. She's stable for now, his father said. But they're worried about brain damage. The stroke was severe. Marcus sank into a chair, the weight of helplessness crushing down on him. His mother, who had attended every school play, every military graduation, who had ironed his first uniform with tears of pride in her eyes, was fighting for her life while he had stood motionless outside a castle. Protecting people who would never know his name, Emma arrived minutes later, and the 3 of them sat together in tense silence, waiting for doctors to provide updates. The hours crawled past. Nurses moved efficiently through the ward. Machines beeped rhythmically. Life and death negotiated in sterile rooms while families waited and hoped. Back at Windsor Castle, Prince William was in his private office when his personal protection officer knocked and entered. Sir, there's a security matter that requires your attention. William looked up from the documents he was reviewing. What kind of matter? One of the Queen's Guard, Sergeant Marcus Thornhill. Security has been conducting an investigation following an anonymous tip, and they've found some potentially concerning behavior on surveillance footage. William's expression became serious immediately. Security matters, especially those involving the guards who protected his family, were never taken lightly. What sort of behavior? The protection officer explained about the photographs, the agitated phone calls, the pattern of unusual activity during break periods. They're still investigating, but the head of security feels you should be made aware. especially given that Thornhill was on duty this morning during the diplomatic breakfast. I see. William stood, his mind shifting into a different mode. The warm, collaborative atmosphere of the morning's meeting felt very far away now. What do we know about Thornhill's background? His service record? Exemplary, sir. 12 years without a single disciplinary incident. Multiple commendations. That's what makes this pattern so unusual. William nodded slowly. Continue the investigation, but do it properly. I want facts, not assumptions. And until we know more, I want Thornhill suspended from duty. If there's an innocent explanation, we'll reinstate him. But we can't take risks with palace security. The protection officer acknowledged the instruction and departed. William returned to his desk, but found himself unable to focus on the documents before him. He thought about the guard he had walked past that morning, the man standing at rigid attention outside the state apartments. Had that been Thornhill? William couldn't say. The guards all looked the same in their ceremonial uniforms, which was rather the point. But if Thornhill was involved in something inappropriate, something that compromised security, then swift action was necessary. The safety of his family couldn't be subordinated to giving someone the benefit of the doubt. Still, William felt uneasy. 12 years of perfect service didn't align easily with sudden security concerns. At the hospital, doctor finally emerged to speak with Marcus and his family. Your mother is stable. The surgery went well, and we're cautiously optimistic. But as I explained earlier, the next day will be critical. We need to watch for any complications. Can we see her? Marcus's father asked. Briefly, one at a time. She's sedated, but you can sit with her. Marcus's father went first, leaving Marcus and Emma in the waiting area. His sister looked at him with an expression that mixed concern and residual anger. You really couldn't check your phone? Not even once. The protocols exist for a reason, Em, Marcus said quietly. If every guard checked their phone whenever they wanted, security would be compromised. We protect the royal family. That requires discipline. And what about protecting your own family? Emma's voice was sharp. What if Mum had died while you were standing there like a statue for tourists to photograph? The words cut deep because Marcus had been asking himself the same question. I don't know, he admitted. I honestly don't know. His phone buzzed with an incoming call. The number was from Windsor Castle. Marcus answered, expecting perhaps Thomas calling to check on him. Instead, was the duty supervisor's voice, formal and cold. Sergeant Thornhill, you need to return to the castle immediately. There's an administrative matter that requires your presence. I'm at hospital with my mother, Marcus said. She had a stroke this morning. I can come in tomorrow. This can't wait until tomorrow, Sergeant. You're required to attend a meeting with the security office at 1600 hours. That's an order. The line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone, confusion mixing with the day's accumulated stress. An administrative matter? In order to attend a meeting? After 12 years of service? He recognized the tone. This wasn't routine. This was trouble. Marcus sat in the hospital parking garage, his hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what was happening. His mother lay in intensive care, fighting for her life. His sister barely spoke to him. And now Windsor Castle was summoning him for an urgent administrative meeting that couldn't wait even a single day. He checked the time, 3:20 in the afternoon. He could make it back to the castle by 4 if he left immediately, but that meant leaving his mother, leaving his father, who looked so fragile in that waiting room. Marcus closed his eyes and made the only choice his training would allow. He started the engine. The drive back to Windsor felt surreal. The same roads he had traveled that morning when the world made sense, when he was simply a dedicated guard with a routine day ahead. Now everything felt unstable, threatening to collapse in ways he couldn't understand. He arrived at the castle with 10 minutes to spare, made his way to the security office. The corridors felt different now, less familiar. 2 guards he passed nodded to him, but their expressions seemed guarded. Knowing something he didn't, Marcos felt a chill that had nothing to do with the castle's stone walls. The head of security's office was austere, functional. Commander Harrison sat behind a desk that had seen 40 years of service. his expression neutral and professional. Two other officers stood near the window, and their presence told Marcus this was serious. Sergeant Thornhill. "Sit down," Harrison said, gesturing to a chair. Marcus sat, his posture instinctively rigid despite the civilian clothes he still wore. "Sir, I was told this was urgent. My mother is in hospital following a stroke this morning. Aware of your family situation," Harrison said, "and I'm sorry for it. But this matter couldn't wait." He opened a folder on his desk. "We've received information suggesting unusual behavior on your part over the past few weeks. Surveillance footage appears to corroborate some of these concerns." Marcus felt his confusion deepen. "Unusual behavior? Sir, I don't understand." Harrison turned a laptop toward him. The screen showed surveillance footage of Marcus in the castle gardens, on his phone, gesturing emphatically. "Can you explain this conversation from 3 days ago?" Marcus watched the silent footage, trying to remember. 3 days ago, Tuesday, his break period. Then it came back to him. "That was my sister, sir. She was upset about our mother's health. Mom had been having dizzy spells, and Emma wanted me to convince her to see a doctor. And this." Harrison played another clip, the one showing Marcus apparently photographing a document. Marcus leaned closer to the screen, then recognition dawned. "That's my brother's university application. He needed a copy of my military service record for a scholarship application. I photographed it to send to him." Harrison made notes. "You photographed an official document related to your service?" "Not a classified document, sir. Just my service record. It's my own information." One of the officers by the window spoke up. "The regulations are clear, Sergeant. No photography of any palace or service documents without authorization. You should have requested an official copy through proper channels." Marcus felt the ground shifting beneath him. "I wasn't thinking of it that way. It was just my own service dates and commendations. I didn't realize." Rassin held up a hand. "What we have, Sergeant, is a pattern. Multiple phone calls during duty breaks that appeared agitated or secretive. Photography of documents. And all of this coinciding with an anonymous tip suggesting you were behaving unusually." "Anonymous tip?" Marcus repeated. "Someone reported me." "For what?" "The tip didn't specify," Harrison said. "It simply suggested we review your recent behavior. And when we did, we found these incidents that require explanation." Marcus felt anger beginning to replace confusion. "Sir, with respect, I've served 12 years without a single incident. My family has been dealing with my mother's declining health for weeks. Those phone calls were family conversations. That photograph was a favor for my brother. There's nothing sinister here." Harrison closed the folder. "Perhaps not. But you violated protocol by photographing that document, regardless of your intentions. And you failed to inform your supervisors about a family situation that was clearly affecting your behavior and attention." "It wasn't affecting my duty performance," Marcus protested. "I never let personal matters interfere with my responsibilities." "Your phone received 17 calls this morning while you were on duty," one of the officers said. 17 attempts to reach you during a medical emergency. If that's not a distraction, I don't know what is." Marcus stood abruptly. "I didn't know about those calls until after my shift. That's exactly how it's supposed to work. We don't have our phones during duty hours. I followed protocol precisely." Harrison stood as well, his expression harder now. "Sit down, Sergeant." "We're not finished." Marcus sat, but the anger remained hot in his chest. He was being investigated, questioned, treated like a security threat because he had followed the rules and helped his brother and worried about his mother. The injustice of it burned. "Here's what's going to happen," Harrison said. "You're being suspended from duty, effective immediately. You'll surrender your access credentials and your uniform. You're not to enter castle grounds except for official meetings. The investigation will continue, and we'll interview your family members to verify your explanations." "You're going to interview my family?" Marcus's voice rose despite his training. "My mother is in intensive care, and you're going to question her about whether my phone calls were really about her health." "We'll be sensitive to her condition," Harrison said. "But yes, we need to verify your account. This is a security matter, Sergeant. It's not personal. It's Feels pretty bloody personal from where I'm sitting, Marcus shot back. The officer by the window stepped forward. Watch your tone, Sergeant. You're already in enough trouble? Harrison raised a hand again. That's enough. Thornhill, you're dismissed. Report to supply to turn in your credentials. You'll be contacted when we have more information. Marcus stood, his mind reeling. How long will this take? As long as necessary. Could be days, could be weeks. I don't get paid during suspension, do I? Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. No. You're suspended without pay, pending the investigation's conclusion. Marcus left the office in a daze. Suspended. Under investigation. Without pay? His mother in hospital. His career, his reputation. Everything he had built over 12 years suddenly in jeopardy because of a few phone calls and one photograph. He surrendered his credentials to a supply officer who wouldn't meet his eyes. Word had clearly spread. Marcus Thornhill, model guard, was now Marcus Thornhill, security risk. The speed of it was devastating. Thomas found him in the parking area. Mate, what's happening? I heard you were suspended, anonymous tip Marcus said bitterly. Someone reported me for behaving unusually. The investigation found me talking to my family on the phone and photographing my own service record. Now, I'm a security threat. Thomas looked shocked. That's insane. Everyone knows you're solid. Apparently not everyone. Marcus unlocked his car. I need to get back to the hospital. My mother's in intensive care and I just got suspended without pay for the crime of having a family emergency. He drove back to the hospital, the anger gradually giving way to fear. Without pay, how would he manage his rent, his bills? His savings would last a few weeks at most. And if the investigation took longer, if they decided to terminate him rather than reinstate him, then what? 12 years of perfect service ended by helping his brother and worrying about his mother at the hospital. His father was sitting with his mother. Marcus joined Emma in the waiting area and told her what had happened. For the first time that day, his sister's expression softened. They suspended you? For phone calls about Mom? And for photographing my service record for David's scholarship application? Apparently that's a security violation. Emma shook her head. This is mad. It's protocol, Marcus said tiredly. The same protocol I've defended for 12 years. Maybe you were right earlier. Maybe I've been choosing the wrong things to protect. His phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. Just heard Harrison brief the duty officers about your suspension. He mentioned the anonymous tip came through an official channel. Someone inside the palace reported you? Marcus stared at the message. Someone inside the palace. Someone who knew him, who worked alongside him, who had deliberately triggered this investigation. But who and why? In his office at Windsor Castle, Prince William was receiving an update on the situation. Thornhill has been suspended, sir. He provided explanations for the behavior we observed, but Commander Harrison felt the protocol violations warranted suspension pending full investigation. William nodded slowly. What's your assessment? Do you think he's actually a security risk? The protection officer hesitated. Honestly, sir, his explanations seem plausible. Family emergency, helping his brother with university applications. But the protocol violations are real, and we can't ignore them. No, we can't, William agreed. He thought about the guard he had walked past that morning. He was unaware that the man's mother was having a stroke, that his family was desperately trying to reach him. The dedication that kept Thornhill at his post was admirable. But the system that prevented him from knowing about the emergency seemed suddenly cruel. Still, security had to come first. William. 3 days passed in a blur of hospital visits and anxious waiting. Marcus's mother remained stable, but unconscious. The doctors cautiously optimistic, but unwilling to make promises. Marcus split his time between the hospital and his flat, where bills were piling up and his savings were draining faster than he had. Anticipated the investigation continued in silence. No one from the palace contacted him. No updates, no timeline, no indication of what was happening. Marcus existed in a strange limbo, neither employed nor officially terminated, neither cleared nor condemned. The uncertainty was worse than any punishment. On the 4th day, Thomas called. You need to hear this, he said without preamble. "I've been asking around, trying to figure out who filed that anonymous tip. And I think I found something." Marcus sat up straighter on his sofa. "What did you find?" "Remember Colin Peterson? The guard who left last month?" Marcus did remember. Peterson had resigned abruptly after being passed over for promotion to officer rank. He had seemed bitter about it, but Marcus hadn't paid much attention at the time. "What about him?" "I talked to someone in personnel. Peterson submitted his resignation the same day he was denied the promotion, and apparently he told several people that the promotion should have been his, that the selection process was unfair." "I still don't see what this has to do with me," Marcus said. "The promotion went to you, mate. You were selected for officer training. The letter was sent to you 2 weeks ago." Marcus froze. "What letter?" "I never received any letter about a promotion." "That's because it was sent to your palace mailbox, and you've been suspended. But I checked with personnel. You were selected. Peterson was the runner-up. And 3 days before your suspension, Peterson sent an email to palace security." The implications crashed over Marcus like a wave. Peterson had filed the anonymous tip. Peterson, angry about being passed over, had deliberately sabotaged Marcus's career by reporting normal behavior as suspicious. The phone calls with his family, the photograph for his brother, all innocent actions twisted into evidence of wrongdoing. That vindictive bastard, Marcus breathed. "There's more," Thomas said. "Peterson's cousin works in Palace Id. I think Peterson might have had access to your phone records, your schedule, maybe even surveillance footage. He knew exactly what to report to make you look suspicious." Marcus felt rage building, hot and righteous. His career was being destroyed because someone couldn't handle being passed over for promotion. His mother was in hospital, he had no income. His reputation was in ruins, and it was all because of Peterson's petty revenge. "I need to tell Commander Harrison," Marcus said. "I already did," Thomas replied. "I went to him this morning with what I'd found. He's reviewing Peterson's email and looking into the cousin's access to palace systems. But Marcus, he told me, investigations don't move quickly. This could still take weeks." "I don't have weeks," Marcus said. "My savings are almost gone. I'm going to lose my flat." Thomas was quiet for a moment. "I've talked to some of the other guards. We're taking up a collection to help you out. No one thinks this suspension is fair."
Alice?
Marcus felt emotion tightening his throat. "You don't have to do that. We're doing it anyway. You'd do the same for any of us." At Windsor Castle, Commander Harrison was indeed reviewing the new information, but with careful skepticism. The fact that Peterson might have filed the tip didn't automatically exonerate Thornhill. The protocol violations were still real. The photograph of the service record, regardless of Thornhill's intentions, was still a breach of regulations. Harrison called Prince William's private secretary. "I need to brief the prince on a development in the Thornhill investigation." An hour later, Harrison was in William's office, explaining what they had learned about Peterson's possible involvement. William listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "So you're saying this entire investigation might have been triggered by a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge?" William asked. "Possibly, sir. We're still verifying the information. But it does cast the original tip in a different light." William stood and walked to the window, looking out over the castle grounds. "And Thornhill's explanations for the behavior we observed, do they hold up under scrutiny? We've spoken with his brother about the university application. The story checks out. We've confirmed his mother's hospitalization. His sister verified the phone calls were about their mother's health. Everything he told us appears to be true."
Oh.
"But he still violated protocol by photographing that document," William said.
Oh, yes, sir.
"That violation is undeniable." William turned from the window. "Commander, I want your honest assessment. Based on everything you know now, is Thornhill a security risk?" Harrison considered the question carefully. "No, sir. I don't believe he is. I think he's a dedicated guard who made a minor protocol error and had the misfortune of doing so just as a vindictive former colleague decided to sabotage him." "Then why is he still suspended?" William asked. "Because the investigation isn't officially complete. We need to finish verifying Peterson's involvement, interview the IT cousin, document everything properly. William sat back down at his desk. How long will that take? Another week, perhaps 2. And in the meantime, Thornhill sits at home with no income while his mother fights for her life in hospital. William's voice had taken on an edge. That doesn't sit well with me, Commander. Harrison shifted uncomfortably. Sir, with respect, the protocols exist for good reasons. We can't just ignore violations because we sympathize with someone's personal situation. I'm not suggesting we ignore anything, William said, but I'm suggesting we consider the proportionality of our response. A dedicated guard with 12 years of perfect service makes one minor protocol error while dealing with a family crisis. Does that really warrant weeks of suspension without pay? The regulations are clear, sir. Then perhaps the regulations need to be reviewed. William made a note on his tablet. I want Thornhill's suspension lifted today. Reinstate him with back pay for the time he's been suspended. But put him on administrative duty rather than active guard duty until the investigation is complete. That way we maintain security while treating him fairly. Harrison looked surprised. Sir, that's highly unusual. So is having a colleague sabotage your career out of spite, William replied. Make it happen, Commander. And I want a full report on Peterson's actions. If he abused his access to palace systems or misused his position to file a false report, there should be consequences. Yes, sir. Harrison stood to leave. One more thing, William added. I want to meet with Thornhill personally once he's reinstated. I think he deserves an explanation and an apology. After Harrison left, William sat alone in his office, thinking about systems and people, rules and compassion. The protocols existed to protect his family, and he would never compromise their safety. But protocols administered without humanity could be just as dangerous as lax security. Thornhill had been punished for being dedicated, for following the rules even when his mother was dying, for helping his brother, for being human. At the hospital, Marcus received the call from Commander Harrison. Sergeant Thornhill, your suspension is being lifted effective immediately. You're being reinstated with back pay and assigned to administrative duties pending completion of the investigation. Marcus couldn't speak for a moment. Sir, I don't understand. What changed? New information came to light regarding the original tip. We have reason to believe it was filed in bad faith by a former colleague. The investigation will continue, but you're no longer considered a security risk. Thank you, sir, Marcus managed. Report to the castle tomorrow morning at 0800. And Sergeant, Prince William has requested a personal meeting with you. The line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone, trying to process what had just happened. Reinstated. Back pay. A meeting with Prince William himself. It felt surreal after days of despair and uncertainty. He went to the hospital to tell his family. His father smiled for the first time in days. Emma hugged him tightly. I'm sorry for what I said, she whispered. About choosing to protect the wrong things. You were just doing your job. Maybe you were right anyway, Marcus said. Maybe I do need to find better balance between duty and family. That evening, Marcus's mother's eyes opened for the first time since the stroke. She was weak, disoriented, but conscious. The doctors were encouraged. She was going to survive. Marcus sat beside her bed, holding her hand, and told her about his suspension and reinstatement. She squeezed his fingers weakly. Proud of you, she murmured. Always proud. The next morning, Marcus returned to Windsor Castle in his uniform, feeling strange and nervous. He completed his administrative assignments efficiently, hyper-aware of the whispers and glances from other guards. Some knew about the suspension, about Peterson's sabotage. Others only knew that Marcus had been in trouble and was now back at 1400 hours. He was escorted to Prince William's private office. Marcus had never been in this part of the castle before. The furnishings were elegant, but understated. Photographs of William's family on the desk beside official documents and tablets. Prince William stood when Marcus entered. Extending his hand, Sergeant Thornhill, thank you for coming, Marcus. Shook his hand, feeling completely out of his depth. Through Royal Highness, please. Sit, William gestured to a chair. I wanted to speak. Marcus sat across from Prince William, acutely aware of every protocol. Every formal rule about how to address royalty, how to sit, where to look. But William's manner was surprisingly informal, almost conversational, which somehow made Marcus more nervous rather than less. "I've reviewed the full details of your case," William began. "The investigation, the suspension, everything that's happened. And I want to start by apologizing." Marcus blinked. "Sir, you don't need to apologize to me." "Think I do," William said. "The system we have in place to protect my family and this institution failed you badly. You were doing exactly what we ask of our guards, following protocol precisely, maintaining discipline even during a personal crisis. And instead of being supported, you were punished." "The protocol violation was real, sir," Marcus said carefully. "I did photograph that document, your own service record, to help your brother with a scholarship application," William replied. "Technically against regulations, yes. But let's be honest about context. You weren't photographing security briefings or floor plans. You were helping family." William leaned forward slightly. "Commander Harrison told me about your mother's stroke, that you received 17 calls that morning while on duty. You didn't check your phone because you were following protocol, that you stood at your post for hours protecting my family while your own family was in crisis. That's the job, sir. Personal matters can't interfere with duty. And I appreciate that dedication more than you know," William said. "But the job shouldn't require you to be inhuman. You have a mother who is dying, a family who needed you, and our system provided no mechanism for you to know that, to respond to that, without being considered derelict in your duty." William stood and walked to the window, looking out over the same castle grounds where Marcus had stood watch countless times. "My wife and I have spent years advocating for mental health support, for understanding that people are whole beings with personal lives and struggles. Yet here in our own household, we had a system that punished someone for being human. Security protocols exist for good reasons," Marcus offered. "They do," William agreed, turning back to face him. "And we won't compromise those protocols. But we can make them more humane. We should make them more humane." He returned to his desk and made a note. "I'm directing Commander Harrison to review our emergency contact procedures. If a guard has a family emergency, there should be a way to discreetly notify them without compromising security." Marcus felt something loosening in his chest, some tension he hadn't known he was carrying. "That would help, sir." "I also want to discuss Colin Peterson," William said, his tone becoming harder. "We've confirmed that he filed the anonymous tip that triggered your investigation. We've also discovered that he accessed your personal phone records and duty schedules through his cousin in it. He deliberately constructed a narrative designed to make innocent behavior appear suspicious." "Heard something about that from a colleague," Marcus said carefully. "What Peterson did was malicious, unethical, and potentially criminal," William continued. "He abused his access to palace systems, violated your privacy, and attempted to destroy your career out of spite over a promotion. We're pursuing legal action against both him and his cousin." Marcus absorbed this. Part of him felt vindicated, but another part just felt tired. "What happens to me now, sir?" "You finish your administrative duty period while the investigation formally concludes," William said, "which should be within the week now that we understand Peterson's role. Then you return to full guard duty. And once you're back, you'll begin the officer training program you were selected for." "I was selected?" Marcus asked. 2 weeks ago. "Peterson was the runner-up, which is why he was so motivated to sabotage you." William smiled slightly. "Congratulations, by the way. The selection board was unanimous. Your record speaks for itself." Marcus felt overwhelmed. Suspended 1 week, promoted the next. His career in ruins one day, secured and advancing the next. It was too much to process. "Thank you, sir. There's one more thing," William said. "Your back pay will include compensation for the suspension period. And we're adding a discretionary payment to help with expenses you incurred during that time. I understand this situation created financial hardship." "That's very generous, sir." Marcus didn't know what else to say. William extended his hand again. "You're a good man, Sergeant Thornhill. You were put in an impossible situation and handled it with dignity. I'm glad we were able to correct this injustice before it went too far. Marcus shook his hand, feeling the formality of the gesture, but also the genuine warmth behind it. I appreciate everything you've done, sir. As Marcus was escorted back through the castle corridors, his mind was racing. Reinstated, promoted, financially compensated. An apology from Prince William himself. It felt surreal, like he had stepped through a mirror into an alternate version of the past week, where everything had gone right instead of catastrophically wrong. Thomas found him in the guard station. Well, how did it go? He apologized, Marcus said, still processing. Prince William personally apologized for what happened. Thomas grinned. Told you this would work out. Everyone knew you were solid. Not everyone, Marcus said, thinking of Peterson. But enough people, I suppose. The next few days passed in a strange kind of normalcy. Marcus completed his administrative assignments, mostly paperwork and inventory checks. Other guards approached him to offer support or congratulations on his promotion. The story of Peterson's sabotage had spread through the ranks, and the general sentiment was one of outrage on Marcus's behalf. At the hospital, Marcus's mother continued to improve. The doctors were now confident she would make a full recovery, though it would take time and rehabilitation. Marcus spent his evenings with her, helping with therapy exercises, reading to her, just being present in ways his duty schedule had often prevented before. You seem different, his mother observed one evening. Lighter somehow, Marcus considered this. I think I've learned something about balance, about being dedicated without being rigid. The suspension changed you, she said. It clarified things, Marcus agreed. I've spent 12 years following rules so precisely that I forgot to question whether the rules always made sense. The protocols are important, but so is being human. Prince William understood that better than I did. On Friday, Commander Harrison called Marcus to his office. The investigation is officially concluded, he said. You're cleared of all suspicion and authorized to return to full guard duty Monday morning. Your officer training begins in 2 weeks. Thank you, sir, Marcus said. Harrison pulled out a document. There's something else. Prince William has requested that you be assigned to his personal security detail once you complete officer training. It's a significant responsibility and a mark of trust. Marcus felt honored and slightly terrified. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Harrison advised. It's a good opportunity. And honestly, after what you've been through, you've earned it. That weekend, Marcus gathered with his family to celebrate his mother's progress and his reinstatement. Emma raised a glass. To Marcus, who finally learned that family matters as much as duty, to balance, Marcus corrected, raising his own glass. To understanding that protecting people includes protecting the ones you love, not just the ones you're assigned to guard. His father smiled. Wise words from my son. Monday morning, Marcus returned to active guard duty, standing at his post outside the state apartments once again. The tourists photographed him. Children pointed and whispered. And Marcus maintained his ceremonial stillness with practiced discipline. But something had changed. He was no longer the rigid soldier who would ignore 17 calls from his dying mother. He was something more flexible, more human. During his afternoon break, Marcus checked his phone, a new habit he had adopted. There were messages from Emma, from Thomas, from his brother David, thanking him for the service record that had helped secure his scholarship. Marcus responded to each of them, taking a few minutes to maintain the connections that mattered. When he returned to his post, he noticed Prince William walking across the courtyard with his children. Charlotte was asking questions about the guards, pointing at their uniforms. William glanced toward Marcus and gave a small nod of acknowledgement. Nothing that would draw attention or break protocol, but enough to communicate recognition and respect. Marcus maintained his stance, but he allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. He had been tested, broken down, and rebuilt. He had learned that duty and humanity weren't opposites, but complements. And he had discovered that even institutions as traditional as the Royal Guard could change, could adapt, could become more humane when someone was willing to question whether the old ways were always the best ways in the weeks that followed. Prince William initiated a review of emergency contact procedures for all palace staff. A system was implemented allowing guards to receive critical emergency notifications during duty hours through their commanding officers. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than the rigid silence that had prevented Marcus from knowing his mother was. Deong Peterson and his cousin faced legal consequences for their actions. The details were kept quiet to avoid scandal, but word spread through the palace staff. 6 months passed, and Marcus Thornhill completed his officer training with distinction. The program had been demanding, testing not just his tactical knowledge and leadership capabilities, but also his judgment in complex situations. The instructors presented scenarios where protocol conflicted with compassion, where rules bumped against human reality. Marcus navigated these challenges with a wisdom born from experience, understanding that the best leaders knew when to follow the book and when to write new pages. His mother had made a full recovery. Defying the doctor's initial concerns, she walked with a slight limp now and tired more easily than before, but she was alive, laughing, present. Marcus visited her twice a week, scheduling his duty shifts to ensure he never missed their standing Tuesday dinner together. Balance, he had learned, required intentional choices, not just good intentions. Emma had apologized several more times for her harsh words in the hospital waiting room. But Marcus always stopped her. "You were right," he told her. "I needed to hear it. I was so focused on being the perfect soldier that I forgot to be a decent brother and son." The new emergency notification system had been tested 3 times in the months since its implementation. Each time, guards had been discreetly informed of family emergencies without compromising security or duty performance. The system worked because it acknowledged a simple truth: people performed better when they weren't consumed by unknown fears about their loved ones. On a crisp November morning, Marcus reported for his first day on Prince William's personal security detail. He wore his new officer's uniform with quiet pride, aware that this assignment represented not just professional advancement, but personal vindication. The man who had been suspended as a security risk was now trusted to protect the future king. Commander Harrison briefed the security team that morning. "We have a busy day. Prince William is visiting 3 youth mental health programs in London, then attending an evening reception at the Natural History Museum. Traffic will be heavy, crowds unpredictable. Stay alert." Marcus took his position in the lead protection vehicle, reviewing the route and identifying potential concerns. His training had covered threat assessment, crowd management, emergency protocols, but it had also emphasized something less tangible: reading people, understanding behavior, recognizing when someone needed help rather than suspicion. The first stop was a community center in South London, where teenagers gathered for counseling and support services. Prince William spent an hour talking with young people about their struggles with anxiety, depression, and social pressure. Marcus watched from his position near the entrance, scanning the crowd but also listening to the conversations. One young man, perhaps 17, stood apart from the others, his body language defensive and closed off. Marcus noticed him because he noticed everything, but also because something in the teenager's posture reminded him of his brother David when he was struggling with university applications and family pressure. The guard Marcus used to be would have simply flagged the young man as a potential concern. The officer Marcus had become saw someone who needed connection, not surveillance. During a quiet moment, Marcus approached the community center director. "The young man by the windows," he said quietly. "Is he all right?" The director glanced over. "Jamie. He's having a rough time. Lost his father last month, falling behind in school, angry at everything. This is his first time here. Not sure he'll come back." "Prince William is good with young people in crisis," Marcus observed. "Maybe an introduction?" The director looked surprised, then thoughtful. "That's kind of you to suggest. I'll see if there's an opportunity." Marcus watched as Prince William was guided toward Jamie. The teenager's defensive posture initially intensified, but William's genuine interest and lack of condescension gradually opened the conversation. They talked for several minutes, and by the end, Jamie was actually smiling slightly. As they departed for the next location, William paused beside Marcus. The director said, "You noticed that young man was struggling." "Thank you for that. Just doing my job, sir," Marcus replied. "No," William said. Your job is to protect me from threats. Recognizing someone who needed help and facilitating that connection, that's something else. That's compassion. The second stop was a school-based counseling program where children as young as 8 receive support for trauma and emotional difficulties. Marcus found these visits challenging in different ways. Children didn't recognize security concerns or maintain safe distances. They simply saw adults and either approached with trust or withdrew with fear. A small girl, perhaps 9 years old, wandered near Marcus during William's tour of the facility. She stared up at him with serious eyes. "Are you a soldier?" she asked. Marcus knelt to her level, conscious of appearing less intimidating. "I'm a guard. I help keep people safe." "My dad was a soldier," she said. "He doesn't live with us anymore." Marcus recognized the careful phrasing, the story a child might tell when the full truth was too complicated or painful. "That must be hard," he said gently. "Sometimes I get angry and I don't know why," the girl continued. "The counselor says it's okay to be angry." "The counselor is right," Marcus agreed. "Feelings aren't wrong. It's what we do with them that matters." The girl considered this, then nodded and wandered back toward her classmates. Marcus stood, aware that William had observed the entire interaction. The prince said nothing, but his expression conveyed approval. The third stop was a residential facility for teenagers in crisis, many of them dealing with severe mental health challenges or trauma. Security was tighter here, protocols more stringent. Marcus coordinated with the facility's staff to ensure William's visit wouldn't disrupt the residents, teens, or trigger anyone in fragile condition. During the tour, one resident, a 16-year-old girl named Sarah, asked William about how he dealt with pressure and expectation. William's answer was honest and thoughtful, acknowledging his own struggles with grief and duty after his mother's death. Marcus watched Sarah's expression shift from skepticism to genuine engagement. Connection, he thought. That's what changes things. Not rules or protocols, but actual human connection. The evening reception at the Natural History Museum was a different environment entirely. Formal dress, champagne, carefully orchestrated networking among donors and supporters of mental health initiatives. Marcus and his team maintained positions around the perimeter. Watching for anything unusual among the well-dressed crowd, Thomas, who had also been promoted to the protection detail, stood near Marcus. "Different from standing outside the palace all day, isn't it?" he murmured. "It's very different," Marcus agreed. "But the principle is the same. Watch, assess, protect." What Marcus didn't expect was for Prince William to approach him during a break in the formal proceedings. "Officer Thornhill, could you join me for a moment?" Marcus followed William to a quieter corner of the museum's main hall, beneath the suspended skeleton of a blue whale. "I wanted to tell you something," William said. "I've been watching you work today. The way you noticed that young man at the community center, how you spoke with that little girl, your coordination with the facility staff. You're not just protecting me physically, you're helping me do this work better." "Sir, I'm just trying to be thorough," Marcus said. "No," William replied. "You're being human. And that makes you better at your job, not worse. I know what you went through with your suspension, how the system failed you. I'm glad we corrected that injustice, but I'm even more glad that the experience didn't break you or make you cynical. It made you wiser." Marcus didn't know how to respond to such personal acknowledgement from someone he was meant to protect rather than engage with as an equal. "Thank you, sir. That means a great deal. I also wanted to tell you that the emergency notification system we implemented after your situation has been noticed by other royal households." William continued. "The Swedish royal family is adopting a similar protocol. So is the Norwegian court. What happened to you, as terrible as it was, is creating positive change across multiple institutions." Marcus felt the weight of that information. His suspension, his mother's stroke, Peterson's betrayal, all of it had led to systems that would help other guards, other families, other people caught between duty and human need. The suffering had meaning, purpose, impact beyond his individual experience. "I'm glad something good came from it," Marcus said. William smiled. "More than you know. You've helped me understand that protecting people, truly protecting them, means more than stopping physical threats. It means creating environments where people can be both professional and human, where dedication doesn't require sacrificing compassion. The reception continued, and Marcus returned to his position, but he carried William's words with him. Months ago, he had been a guard who measured success by rigid adherence to protocol. Now he was an officer who understood that the best protection came from wisdom, not just rules. The evening concluded, and William's motorcade returned to Windsor Castle. Marcus reflected on how completely his perspective had shifted. The suspension that had felt like career destruction had actually been career transformation. The injustice had revealed flaws in the system, and those revelations had created opportunities for meaningful change. At the castle, as Marcus Kump,